Welcome to the Circle Trust Digital Safeguarding event. My name is Railton Blyth and I'm the Director of Safeguarding for the Circle Trust. We wanted to put this event on for you as parents and carers, as I wrote to you about in the last 6 months, because we appreciate that parenting itself is a tough job, it's difficult, there's no handbook for it, but particularly so in 2025 when there's so much going on across society and so much going on online, and it's about our commitment as to working with you as parents and carers to make sure we're providing as much information as possible as to how we can keep our children safe. I'm delighted that James Garnett, the Circle Trust IT consultant, is joining us today for this event. James has over 30 years experience in this field and was the IT director for one of the largest multi-academy chains in the country, United Learning, so he's a real expert on this. But most importantly, I would say as well, is that James is a father, as am I, and we are living this journey alongside you with this. And as a parent to a year 5 and 4 children, I am concerned as well, and I need to learn. I'm not arrogant enough to believe I know everything as to what I can do for my own children, as well as the 4,000 young people in the Circle Trust. So this event is going to be broken down into 3 parts. We're going to be looking at how we can establish boundaries with technology. We're going to look at the digital safety measures and the security practices as well beyond that. And a big thank you to those of you that have put forward questions in advance of this event, because it really helps us to focus on the need and the different things you would like us to cover. So I will ask James questions as we go through, and James will share obviously his experience and his knowledge as well for us. So welcome, James.
Thank you, Railton, and thank you for that introduction. I am a parent of 2 young adults now. They've left home and both at university, but I have experienced parenting as technology has developed, as I have felt a little bit out of my depth. I'm not a TikToker. Snapchat really didn't do much for me, but I know my children were using it. And how I parent and how Railton parents will be very different. But what we can give you through this is just some sort of touchstones of, well, actually I can do that, or that may be a bit extreme for me, but I can see that maybe I can go up towards it, or no, I want to do it differently, and maybe I want to delay when I give my child a phone further than even James does. But it gives you some touchstones so that you feel comfortable in the decisions that you make. And we all parent differently, but I don't think we would let our children out onto the street and let them cross the road before we'd gone out with them, before we'd taken them across the road, shown them how to cross safely. We'd look to our schools and primary schools to support with that. And this morning, seeing a parent let a child on a scooter zip round the corner on a main road, on the pavement, but round the corner, and the mother not seeing it, you're going, oh, would I do that? We all do things differently. The child did cross the road safely because it waited at the lights for the mother to come round the corner and walk them across. So again, we all do things differently. But for us in this field, I think we can help you look at what some of the risks are and enable you to make those informed decisions.
Absolutely, thank you. Thank you very much, James. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about the technology in the home, and I think what we need to set here as well is that technology obviously has a massive part to play in society. It can make such a wonderful difference to our lives, and we don't want this to be a negative event. We're just talking about the downside of technology. It's more about upskilling ourselves as how to use it appropriately. So the first question, James, really is about technology in the home, and what sort of technologies are there, and why do we use it, and our impact on us?
Yeah, I think it's very easy to think about the technology in the home just being that computer, laptop, iPad or phone. That's often what we think about when we think about internet safety. We're thinking about the tools that we as adults often use in everyday life. We can often forget about some of the other things that sit in the house that are connected. And most parents will be familiar with one of the games consoles. For me, growing up in the 70s, 80s. Consoles were very, very basic, and now you look at them and it's no longer just playing yourself, you're playing with other people. It's no longer just playing a game against someone, you can communicate and you can talk to them. So when we introduce this technology into our home and we let our children use it, it's being in control of, well, what games are they playing? What do I feel comfortable with? But beyond that, who can they talk to? Because I don't think there aren't many games these days that aren't online. And who are they talking to? And it may well be that your children are playing Minecraft, Fortnite, Roblox. They are all connected worlds. And it's how we as parents engage with that. And you may feel uncomfortable playing the game with your child. Maybe that's one of the things you want to do. But we go beyond the games consoles, connected TVs. Your internet connection now will often come with a box that you can connect your TV up to and all the TV programs, and you can get your Disney Plus, your Apple, your Amazon working off that as well. And maybe how you want to set that up and how your children can see appropriate content versus what you might want to watch. And the fact that it learns what you watch and therefore will recommend content. So I would always say when you're looking at this connected content, have a profile for everyone. Because what you watch on TV may not be what you want your child to watch, but if they're using the same account, they will be recommended that sort of content. We move beyond that into the Alexas and the Siris and all these smart speakers that you have in your home. You know, what are they doing? What can you ask them? What responses will they get? Are you happy with the sorts of responses they might give your children? They are fairly well locked down though. And beyond that, we're into our smart lights, our smart central heating, our smart cars. It is everywhere and we can't shy away from it. I think we just need to, as we bring it into the home, think about, well, how might it be used? How can it be used? And how can I create that environment I feel happy with my children using?
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. I think we focus a lot to talk about digital safeguarding, and the default is to talk about the smartphone, isn't it? But it goes much beyond that. And for my son this year, we relented to get him a Nintendo Switch. But having the parenting controls on that as well, and it might be unknown that there is an app you can have the parenting controls, but managing screen time in particular as well, being able to see everything that's happening in place on the Nintendo Switch, as well as the other consoles as well that are out there could use. There are others on the market, not just the Nintendo Switch, not promoting just Nintendo Switch. So what can we do as parents to role model good behaviour, good technological behaviour?
This is a really hard one because when we see other people in places, I wouldn't do that, I'm not sure I'd do that. And I think I have to be very careful about what I perceive or how I use technology. There's something about being present, and whether you're in a meeting and everyone's got their laptop screens up, and are they taking notes or are they answering emails or looking at their shopping for the weekend? There are often meetings I go into where people say, I want you to be present, you put your screens down. And I think, as parents, we need to be present. When a child's asking us a question, are we on our phone or are we engaging with them? And I can think of times when, or the few times that I was picking up my children when they were at primary school, looking at the parents, and this is how awful I am sometimes, but watching other people, and the child coming up to the parents saying, Mummy, I've done this, the mother's, or the father, it doesn't have to be the mothers, but on their phone and they're answering emails, or they're not present with the child. And I think it's how do we model that presence, so we're engaging with the child, but they don't see us always on the phone. Because otherwise that becomes the norm, that, well, you're on the phone all the time, so why can't I be? And that might be also at meal times, and there are conversations in my house, if one of us picks up the phone because it's bleated, or we're going to check something because a question's come up, but we've always said you can't have phones at the table. And it's how you manage it, but there's a conversation going on, you're present, and are we modelling that? Think about what it looks like when everyone's watching TV, and I'm equally bad for this. If the TV's not particularly interesting, if I've got the phone and am I flicking through that? So it's what do we model? How do we want the children to think about it? Because they will look at us and they will see that as the norm. And so we are modelling behaviour. I think it also is what do we post online? Because if you're posting lots of content about your children online, they will think nothing about posting content about themselves. They'll also think nothing about posting content about you as a parent that you may also find equally embarrassing. So there's an interesting conversation about consent, and I know that schools talk quite a lot about consent and what you can put online and what you can do. And I think there's an interesting conversation between parents and children about, are you happy with me putting this on my Facebook feed? Because for some of the children it's embarrassing. The other one is, do you comment on your children's social media feeds? And what does that look? Because that could be highly embarrassing for a teenager. My daughter now, who's at university, she just about can cope with her mother posting heart emojis or things. But yeah, it's not my thing, but it's, you know, how do you engage with your child, and how are you having a conversation? And almost that's that modelling bit, is talking about technology. How do we use it as a family, and what do we feel is acceptable? And that then forms part of that family conversation. In the same way, you have conversations about when you can go out with friends, you know, what age you let your friends out. So it's all about digital parenting is parenting. It's just with an additional arm on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And interested in that, I was having conversations with one of the local authorities a couple of weeks ago about health visitors and their work with families, because they had been raised about when mums are breastfeeding and looking at their phone or being on their phone at the same time and losing that social connection with their child at such an early age, and the child raising up thinking that's a norm at such a young age as well, and talking about that. So it goes back to that role modelling, good behaviours. I think one of the easiest answers we can always have as a parent is that, well, we'll just take the technology off them. And you know, as I shared just then, is that it's taken now to my child till 9 that I've relented or said, right, you can have a Nintendo Switch, and I know that it would be maybe done a long time ago. So I hold myself to account here is that it can sometimes be, well, let's just remove technology from them because of the fear of it and the impact on it. But is it okay to take technology off children? What?
I think there's two elements. This is what age do you give them access to technology, and that's very much your decision as a parent, what you feel comfortable with. I, as a parent, our children didn't get phones till they went to secondary school, and then within that there was some very strict guidance about how long they could have it for. Prior to that, they had technology, you know, that we controlled the apps they had on them, but they could watch some YouTube content, YouTube Kids. They could watch iPlayer. I had some control. There weren't any social media apps because most, if not all, the social media apps have terms and conditions say you've got to be over 13. So if you're going to sign up for it at 11, you've got to lie about your age. So you're already starting to teach children about it's okay not to tell the truth. But also, when you don't sign up with the right age, then you have a problem with the safeguarding tools they put in place for children. So if you sign up as a 25-year-old, you'll get adult safeguarding. If you sign up as a 13-year-old, you'll get the right safeguarding. If you stay that age, it may well be when you're 13, you've suddenly turned into an adult and you've lost all the safeguarding that should be there when you're 13. So you have to think very hard about that. Taking technology off, when I gave my children technology from a young age, it had a timer on it and it would time out. And it wasn't me timing them out, it was the technology. And I think if you can do that, you remove that battle of, give me the phone, give me the phone, no, I'm not doing it, and you have a battle. If the technology turns itself off, then you are not directly involved in that process. They've had an hour using it. They've had an hour using the tablet, and then it's turned off. Well, I want more time. No, you've had your hour. There will be some pushback initially, but certainly my children got used to it. There was boredom. I quite like boredom. I think boredom's important for children in terms of they're developing their imagination. I think it makes them go and find and do something else. You know, they have other toys to play with, but the phone is more engaging, and it's designed to be engaging. You know, social media companies, advertisers want you on that device. So the psychologists have worked out how to engage you, and we know that as adults they're incredibly engaging. You know, it's not just children who have a problem with the technology, we all do. So how do we support children from disconnecting from it? The technology can do it for us. And I think that is, you know, it's, as we'll pick up a bit later, picking up those digital controls. that enable you to, as a parent, to be in control, but you give some of the responsibility and some of those difficult bits to something else that does time them, does lock them out. They'll often allow you to give them extra time, and sometimes if you're on a long car journey, you may want to give them an extra half an hour because it's just a bit easy, but you don't have to, and you can control it, and it's at your decision, it's not the child's. So I think that's part of it. We inherited a safe in our house when we moved, which was really quite useful because we used to lock the phones away at night. Some people have what's called a phone crash. Phones are downstairs at night, adults and children's. Or we had a safe, and it had the chocolate in it, the chocolate biscuits, because wherever you put them, they'd get eaten. If it wasn't just for phones, but it meant that at a certain time of night, and it might be 8 o'clock when they were younger, 9 o'clock as they got older, but they came off them and they went downstairs and they were away. And that hour before bedtime without technology is really important for sleep. It allows the brain to slow down. It allows it to adapt to what you want to do, which is go to sleep. I was still reading to my children into their teenage years, so 11, 12, I was still reading to them because there was nothing else, and I was better reading to them than anything else. There are challenges because it drives your music, and if you're heavily into music, what do you play music on? No one has a radio ready these days. It's all Spotify. So how you manage that needs to be carefully thought through. But I think having a period of time where you're not looking at a screen is really important in terms of your mental health, your well-being, and your ability to sleep. And for children who maybe struggle a little bit or are a bit anxious, having a period of time where they are calm. And I suppose I'm a passionate believer in reading. Bit of educator sitting in the back there, but the ability, what that does in terms of broadening your vocabulary, helping you in school, I think is really powerful. And if you've got a phone, you'll look at it. And I'm equally bad. I will play some inane games on my phone rather than do something else. And occasionally I uninstall it. So I think that for me is the important bit is use technology to manage it, but also think about when you take technology off them at night, but also model that again yourself. If the phone is put by your bedside and every time they see you and you're sat in bed on your phone, it's not ideal. I must admit, now my children left home, I may have slipped a little bit.
And it's really important to talk about the reading there, because we know in our schools there's a big focus on reading, absolutely rightly, and developing vocabulary. We're currently at James and Giant Peach at the moment, is ours, a chapter a night at James and Giant Peach. And they both have an Amazon Alexa in their bedrooms, which they can listen. They also listen to on Audible. So before they go to sleep, they listen to a story on there. And then one of them loves white noise. That's his way.
Yes.
They'll get to listen to white noise on that. So that's really, really powerful.
I mean, so I picked up one thing there. You're talking about bedrooms, and I was tried very hard to keep technology out of the bedroom. And for me, I wanted to be a safe space for them, and not having technology in there meant that they didn't. I mean, I was fortunate; we could sit them somewhere else to do their homework. But I tried very hard to keep technology out of the bedroom so that it wasn't the space where technology was used. And part of that is so that they don't have it at night. And I think having your phone in your bedroom at night is a real challenge in terms of wanting to look at it.
Absolutely. And that brings you nicely on to, I mean, one of the most common questions we had come in, and I can actually talk to this as well, is about that. When should a child have a phone or a tablet? And it's almost become a rite of passage now. My daughter's in year 5, and the expectation from her is that her next birthday in May next year, she'll be turning 11, so therefore I will be getting a mobile phone. And my wife and I haven't had that discussion with her. It's almost like a society dictates that that's what it should be. And I know that there's real concerns about when they should have it, and also the peer pressure to the type of phone you should have. And I know there's a lot of work going across in our schools, but also nationally as well, about smartphones and dumb phones, or the snake phones as we like to call them. And there was an article from Oxford Spires the other day If you haven't seen that, have a look at that in terms of the head teacher making a change there in terms of the dumb phone. That's something that we're doing in our schools at the moment. But really, what's your view on that, James? As to is there a right time, and how should we manage it?
There's a right time for every family. I think it will be different. Secondary school was for me. That was because they were getting a bit more freedom. They were moving away from that primary school environment that was a little bit more sort of comforting, put it. Secondary school was quite different, often much bigger. It was more about the communication, more about the end of school communication of I'm coming out, can you pick me up, or I'm running late, wait at the school gates, or you're going to need to walk home, because they could walk home if they really wanted to, but it's uphill. So it was about how to manage, how you could support them in that quite a big change. You can make a smartphone dumb. It just depends on what apps you install on it. And I think whatever phone you choose to give your child, or whatever time you choose to give them a device, there is a conversation going on in the family about, well, this is why we think it's appropriate. This is how we think you should use it. This is what our rules are as a family. Do we all agree with this? You might have to sign up to them as parents. No technology at the table. I used to have no technology. Actually, I had no TV. Until you're ready for school, there's no tech, no TV. Because you could guarantee they'll be sat watching the television at 7 years old, and then suddenly it's time to go, but I haven't done this, this and this. So it was, once you're ready, you can have it. So there was a bit of carrot in there about trying to get them organised. And I think the same thing with technology, you can't have it until you're ready for school, because once they get it, it'll become quite obsessive. So being able to manage what apps go on there, and often as parents we're going, well, I've got this old phone, it's a 3-year-old, 2-year-old phone, I've just had an auto upgrade from my provider. What do I do with this? It's still usable. Well, I'll give it to my child. I think at that point you want to think about, well, how do I secure it? And you may not be buying the phone, but you might be paying a bit of money for an app that allows you to monitor it and control it. And that applies to whether it's a console. Who sets up the console? Is it you or is it the child? You probably don't want them having full control of it. Give them a tablet. How do you control it? And you may be giving them a tablet at a much younger age. There's some quite interesting apps. But again, you're managing it. You're thinking about, well, how much time do they have on it? The technology and the age at which you move from a tablet to a phone will depend on what you as a parent, guardian and group of, you talk about a group decision, and it is, amongst the adults in the house there's a group decision, but also involving the child, and they understand that at the moment this is this, and if we'll decide again in 12 months time, and if you're coping well with it, we'll change it. And for my children it went from, you can't have after 7 o'clock you haven't got technology, after 8 o'clock, after 9 you can have it in your bedroom, but we want it out of there by 10 o'clock. And it's not as if they're using it as a phone. I'm not sure my children made many phone event calls, if any, on their phones. It was more about messaging. So I think it's about managing that, what are they doing with it, and feeling confident that you can, once you put that technology in your child's hands, that you can walk into their bedroom and they're not saying, wait a minute, well, what are they doing? They've got a piece of technology that opens them up to the world, and am I happy with that? You mentioned fear of missing out, and this is a real challenge. It's not just about the right technology, it's about the right apps. If your child is not allowed Snapchat, but every other child in their class, and I put every in quotes, because every child has a phone in year 5 or they don't. Every child's on Snapchat, they're not. But there will be a fear of missing out, and this FOMO is not just for children, it's also for adults. We think of social isolation and bullying by exclusion. 29 people in the class are in the group but you're not, or 5 of your friends are in a group and you're not in it. is there a reason? And that can cause social anxiety in quite a lot of it. As a parent, we're going to have to deal with it. And I think saying, no, we don't feel comfortable with that app is fine. I think if you give them an app, I think you ought to get them to talk through how they're using it and how they secure it. But you are responsible, you can't. I think we have to take that level of responsibility and say, no, we're not happy as a family with that, and stick to it. And they will find other ways of communicating with their friends. They'll use text. You may allow WhatsApp because everyone in the family uses WhatsApp and you've got a WhatsApp family group. But I would say, can I just see your phone on a regular basis and see what messages you're sending? And they can delete them. But at least it means that at any point they know you might pick it up and look at it.
Absolutely. There's a couple of things that I just down as you were talking, and it's almost like maybe and we could look at this as a trust, some templates, but a written contract so that everyone understands before, in terms of the timings, this is our expectations. So you've got that somewhere, and also the ownership. I mean, one of the bit of advice I was given a few years ago was reminding young people who owns the phone. Actually, the parent, it belongs to the parent, so you have the right to withdraw it and look at it whenever you want to check on that. And sadly, some of the people watching this video will be aware of, because they've received a video from me this week, is that on the Year 6 induction days at one of our secondary schools, students were, they didn't have their phones out, because their smartphones or phones aren't allowed out in school, but they've been sharing numbers and things like that. So it was a way of getting to know one another, socialising. But sadly, over the last weekend, we'd had reports from parents that groups have been set up and unkind comments have been said to one another already. And this is in Year 6, the students haven't started at school yet, and the concern is that this is their precursor to starting at secondary school and already face these types of things. So it's make sure again is that going back to be able to monitor that use and be able to see it and what's taking place and what's been said on that and intervening.
And what I will say is that if you are so strict that you say your child can't have a phone till they're in year 12, if a child really wants to, there's no reason why they won't go out and buy a phone and buy a pay as you go SIM. And I think it's about your relationship with the child. If you lock the phone down so tightly that they can't go in with it, are they going to go and get something else? And some of it is about that relationship you have with your child and confidence about how they're behaving. Some of it is about giving them a chance to see how they're going to develop, because what you don't want to have is at 18, your child suddenly getting a phone and all the apps, and they've not had the support from you and their peers in developing good use of technology. You don't keep your child in for the until they're 18 and they say, okay, there you go, you can now cross the road, and they don't know what a car is, they don't know how to do it safely. I think we owe our children that duty of care to support them as they progress through their early years, into their teenage years, and as they leave home, that they feel comfortable using technology and they're using it safely. They are showing good practice. They are not vulnerable to other people exploiting them, and they are not hitting 18 and suddenly finding that it's a world they don't feel comfortable with. Because it's there for us all, and it is an integral part of our lives. I might not use TikTok, but I know it exists. So I think we owe them a duty to help them get to the point of when they leave home, whether it's 16 or 18, that they are comfortable, confident users of technology.
Absolutely. And you touched on there, but behaviours. What sort of behaviours would a parent or carer see that would then start to raise concerns that there is potentially addiction, or there are some concerns around the mobile phone? What would they see in their child?
I think some of it is around secrecy. I don't want to see it, that's mine, don't look at it. I think some of it will be becoming more withdrawn, becoming less communicative. Now that could just be being a teenager, and trying to get the balance right is really hard. Are they? Is there something wrong, or is it just hormonal? And having seen my children go through that, and go through the grunting stages, particularly of teenage boys, and discovering they are really communicative with their friends. I mean, what I will say is, listen to your children on their games consoles when they've got their headsets on, they're talking to their peers. You'll discover they are very communicative. They've got a good grasp of the English language. They just don't have it with you. So there is something going on there about being part of that life. But I think it's looking at do they get really distressed when you take it off them? Now, there are reasons why they might be, and there might be reasons why they're anxious, but it's trying to understand it. You'll understand your child, you'll see changes in behaviour that make you worry about things. That is when, one, that's a conversation with your child, it's a conversation with your safeguarding lead at school and your pastoral teams at school. It's ensuring that your child always feel comfortable talking to you, and that can be hard with children who are struggling with their own changes, mentally, hormonally, physically, academically, the pressures they get there, but how do you ensure that you are always there and can talk to them? And by having an ongoing conversation about the tools they use, the first time your child says, yes, I've been talking to someone on Snapchat and I'm a bit worried about what they're saying to me, your first question isn't what's Snapchat. It's your first question is, well, how can I help you? Because you understand the technology, because you've talked to them about, well, what is Snapchat and how does it work, and how are you using it, and how do you stay safe on it? And I've heard all these things about it. Should I be worried? And they will often be quite articulate about, no, I know how to stay safe. Schools talk to me about it. In probably a quite derogatory term, nothing against you, Railton, but you know what it's like. But they will then hopefully talk to you about how they're using technology, because we learn from them as much as they learn from us.
Absolutely. I think it brings around nicely as well is about the element of using tracking as well. Is it over-parenting? Is there a place for it?
The children will be tracking each other through Snapchat Max, if nothing else. Yeah. I think I find that really quite frightening. But I know friends and colleagues who track their children, and their children track them, and I think it's a two-way process. If as a family you say we're all going to track each other just so we know where we are, and it's for that safety, and we can then help you if there's a problem, I think that's fine. I went for a run this morning and I broadcast my run to my family, partly so they know I'm doing some exercise possibly, but it's I have no problem with that. I think if it's one way, it's a bit of a problem, but we all feel more comfortable, particularly when people are away, that we know where they are. So I have no problem with tracking apps. I just think that it's a conversation and a good understanding of why we're doing it, and it's not because I'm spying on you. It's just that as a family we track each other. But because you allow yourself to be tracked as much as them, then I think it's fine. What I would say is you want to go for a tracking app that you feel comfortable using, and look at what it does with that data. Who is it sharing with? There are some free ones out there. I would always be a bit dubious about anything that's free, because it's only free because they're selling your data to someone else. If you're paying for it, it's slightly different. A lot of the native apps within your Android phone, your Apple phone, will do some basic tracking. But if you want something a bit more sophisticated, then there are other ones out there. But you're probably going to need to pay for it, just so that you can be a bit more confident that you're not sharing your data with people.
Absolutely. And I think that then we start to talk about, I think as families, you'd normally, there's the Android versus iOS devices, you've normally made a decision as to what you're going to have, and everyone would have the same one. But how does it work if that's not the case? And if you've got an iOS device and your child has an Android device, how can that work in terms of being able to do parenting controls, and then be able to track, although I probably paid that, but how would you manage that?
There are quite a few tools out there that will do parental controls. As education establishments, we use tools to manage the apps on the devices and control them. So there are a number out there that you can look at, and you will have to pay for it. It won't be free, but they will enable you to control what is on your child's device. So you can install apps on it, you can remove them, you can decide how long it's on for, you can also work out what it wants to connect to, because of course, if you think about when you connect your device to the internet, you can connect it to on a mobile connection, you can connect it on your Wi-Fi connection, you can connect it at McDonald's, you can connect it possibly at school if you're allowed to. And some of those are filtered and some of them are not. So on my home connection, I put parental controls on it, even for myself, because I don't really want to see, I don't want to accidentally come across content that I feel is not very nice. So I put parental controls on that. You can put parental controls on your mobile phone. And if you're giving your child a mobile phone, you want to ensure that there is some filtering on that just by default, so that they are restricted from some of the more harmful content that's out there. But you can then control what they can connect to, so they can't connect to a rogue access point and access content you would feel uncomfortable with. So I would look at some of these control tools that you can put on them. A lot of them will have a free trial, and 30-day free trial, and you want to find one that is simple enough for you to use as a parent, that you feel comfortable using, and then once if you trial it, that works for you, and then maybe pay for it, and give you that confidence that you are in control of that. There used to be devices out there that were just for children, and you had a parental, you could lock your child in, and then there was parental access, and you could control what they could see on it. And certainly on consoles, there is that ability. You can, if you are the admin of your child's Xbox or Nintendo Switch, you can control what games they can play, you can control who they can talk to, you can look at their contacts list. So that sort of thing I think you want to be having a look at. I can't recommend any, mainly because they keep on changing, but also it depends on what your needs are as a parent.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've touched a lot about having that open culture from the start, being able to talk to your child and then be able to raise concerns with you, and having that pre-conversation before having a phone, things like that. But one thing I just wanted to touch on was about emojis, and this has come out obviously really big and highlighted with around adolescence and what we're seeing in there. Talk to us a little bit more about that. And I understand that there's localised emojis and national emojis and what they mean for young people.
Even I struggle with emojis, and it's not just emojis; it's also 3 and 4 letter acronyms. And my daughter and my son, more my daughter than my son actually, come out with terms that I have no idea what they're talking about, and I've said, "What does that mean?"
We've got FOMO in today. So
I've got FOMO in today, and I'm not sure they would know what FOMO is actually.
It's an old one.
But my daughter sometimes being lit, and I had to look that up. And other things, so that they will use language that you are not familiar with, and they will write it in their text, and you won't be familiar with it. And it may just be an open conversation of, what on earth does that mean? Partly because when you message them, they might laugh because you put something in there that they think is hysterically funny. You've got no idea why it is. And that's your urban slang that will come out. Now emojis, and I think I will share. I think I've shared with you a set of emojis.
Yes.
They're almost like a periodic table of emojis, and there are various emojis that refer to private parts, that refer to particular activities, and once the adults know about it, then they'll stop using it and they'll find something else. So if you see something written down, then I think it's ask your child, what does this mean? Why are you using it? And if they are really reticent to tell you, then probably you might want to look at what does the emoji stand for. And some of them you may well be familiar with. But it's worthwhile, just because you see emojis used, you might want to ask, why that one? Because of course, although when you look at your WhatsApp, there's sort of 4 standard emojis it offers you, you can add 1 of 1,000 in there, and some of them have quite explicit connotations.
Absolutely. And I've got the emoji table here that you sent me, which we'll send out with this event as well, so you can see that. One of the parents wrote to us to talk about the fact that we focus a lot, and we do, and actually I hold our hands up on this, a lot around our digital safeguarding is talking about the external threats, the bullying, the concerns about abuse, and who are you talking to, and things like that. But what about the internal factors for a young person and the impact that can have on that neurological development? How can that impact on a young person?
It's really fascinating. I think if you looked at in the early days of social media, even now, who's on their payroll, there are an awful lot of psychologists on their payroll, and there'll be scientists looking at, well, how does this affect the user? Because they make money by selling advertising. In order to sell advertising, they will need to keep you on the device, and the longer they keep you on the device, the more you're likely to look at more adverts. Scrolling is one of those. The reason why we scroll up is that it's highly addictive. It just tweaks something in our mind that works really well. Loot boxes are really interesting, and the government and the sort of safeguarding community have pushed quite hard to remove loot boxes. What a loot box is, you're playing a game and you will win a loot box. Now you don't know what's in the loot box, and it may be really good, it may have nothing in it at all. But the high you get from thinking you're going to get something is almost better than when you actually get it. And in the same way that you look, and it's that gambling piece, it's that you are going to get it, oh no it's not, but you have had that hit and you're going to go looking for it again. And so loot boxes are a real concern. They make you want to have more of it. And the games will only be successful if you play it a lot, because they want you to then go and buy the next one. They want you to talk about how good it is. They want you to play it more. So there is that bit about really sucking you in. I don't play computer games anymore because I find them highly addictive. I'm someone who, I used to teach. Start some holidays, I go and buy a game, and I would probably game straight for 24, 36 hours. And I found them really addictive. That bit of getting a bit more, getting a bit more, getting a bit more, you've achieved something, I've got to stay up, I want to get on to the next one. A bit like reading a book, you get to the end of the chapter, it leaves you on a cliffhanger, you've got to go and read a bit more. But that's not as stimulating and as addictive as you've achieved that level. Oh, I've just seen what's coming, I've got to keep playing it. I want to get my character up to the next level. I want to beat the end of game monster. I want to, and it becomes very, very addictive. So that is a real concern, is that they are designed to make you want to do more. And of course, if you come off that, it's now bedtime, you're wired, you're really hyper. You need time to calm down, you need time to relax, so that actually your body is then ready to go to sleep. So it's that internal piece. On the flip side of it, it's really positive. During lockdown, my son couldn't go out. He spent a lot of time on his console. He was talking to his friends, and I could hear him talking to them. My daughter's not a gamer, but she talks to her friends through social media. She's got friends through some of the sport that she's done who are around the country, and they have quite a positive social media platform and social media group. Likewise, she has some that aren't so positive. More about the FOMO piece than anything else, and the feeling that, well, why aren't I there when they're at? And we all get that a little bit. People come, before phones were mobile, you'd hear someone was at a party the night before, and you think, well, why wasn't I invited? And I think there is, that's human nature in us. So I think there is something there that, it does make us feel anxious. And when we look at the technology, it's helping our children understand that. And for me, it's also about when you have access to it. So, I talk about no phones in the bedroom, and somebody says, oh, no, my child can phone in the bedroom. I think there's something about restricting that access because of how it makes us feel. And I bet that's my phone.
Is that a phone ringing? Lovely. That's great technology, isn't it?
Is it that one?
Someone knows we're recording.
Yes, if someone does know the recording, and I could have sworn I put it on silence. Just put it in another room, honestly. Even I can't get my technology right, but I think the challenge is around if we think about when we make rational decisions, and if we think about how we make, how does it make us feel? What's the psychology in this? If we think about how we make decisions when we're tired.
Yeah.
Now we know what children can be like when they're hungry and crabby, or when they're tired and crabby. We know what we are like when we are tired, and I know what I used to be like when I had younger children coming back from. If I'd been out on a long day and I got back at 8 o'clock at night and they wanted my attention, I may not have been as enthusiastic as I could have been. But if you are on your phone and you're feeling a little bit crabby, you can make poor decisions. You'll see things, you'll misinterpret it. We do that in conversations, but at least we've got visual clues that tell us, actually they don't mean it in that way. But on the phone, you will read it and you'll think of it as being something completely different. And we may well respond in haste. And the reason for not having a phone in the bedroom is the 2 a.m. texts generally are not rational and are not sent in the right way. And if you are the one who's coming into that conversation at 7 a.m. in the morning fresh, you'll be going, what are they going on about? And actually you've not been part of that friendship breakup or implosion, and it gives you a chance to see it in a different light. So I think for me, psychologically, it's the games that we play are designed to be addictive. How do we ensure that our children feel they can stop? And having a conversation with them about, yes, but it's supposed to do that. We need to understand why you want getting them to talk about, well, I really want to be on it. I really want to stay on it. Yes, but what's that doing to you? How does it make you feel when you go to bed? And initially it will still be an uphill battle, but at some point they will turn around and say, oh yeah, you're right, I will come off. And I have I've got children now, I still think my son games too much, but he's obviously got that from me. But my daughter is very good. She, as she came up to exams in A-levels, particularly, but also GCSEs, she's very good at saying, can you take my phone off me? Can I put my phone in your office? Because otherwise it's a distraction. And she would do that, and she still does that now. She will turn her phone off. She's got on it. She has a timer for Instagram because she knows if she doesn't have it, she'll spend too much time on it because she's addicted to it, or would be more so. So that ability to make some rational discussions, that's taken a long time of conversation and argument and frustration. But as we talked about at the start, I've hopefully got to the place where she's able to manage it now. And for me, as a teacher, you can imagine what I'm like as a parent. But as a teacher and as a parent, when I taught children, it was about I'm preparing them, whether I'm teaching them a subject or whether I'm talking about internet safety in school. Then I want to help and prepare them to go into the world and feel confident in issues.
Absolutely. And to bring us back round, we were talking about as parents and carers of looking at phones and seeing what was going on. In terms of their legal duty, what is the right of parents to be able to see what their child is doing on these social platforms and WhatsApp and Snapchat, etc.?
If you were to ask WhatsApp or Snapchat to have a look at what your child has done on the phone, I think you'd struggle. Really struggle. Because as far as they're concerned, it's the child's. They have completely different rights, rules about what you can do. But as a parent, to ask your child, hopefully you have that relationship with your child that they will show you what's on there. But I think you would really struggle to see or ask them to show you what's on. And WhatsApp they can't see anyway because it's all encrypted, end-to-end encryption, and more will be going that way. And so if you can't access the device, you can't see what's on it. But I know that there are real challenges. If they got parental controls, then it's much easier. So Instagram and TikTok, Snapchat do offer parental supervision tools. that you can monitor activity, set screen time, and restrict certain content, but being able to see what's written is quite hard. But I would be asking my children, well, can you just show me what's there? There are various rules about, platforms should provide age-appropriate content and transparency on data disclosure. Deceased children is a real problem. There are various cases about children taking their own life and parents wanting to see what content was on them, and they have struggled for years and years to get access to that. The UK Online Safety Act is trying to address some of it, but it's still not there. There are tools that allow you to track social media usage, but often won't let you see what the content is. Apple really locks down their device and won't let third parties get access to the apps that sit on there very easily. So it's really hard to track what is on there. If you want to get access to it, it may require an awful lot of money spent on legal experts, and that may not get you there, and may require the police to be involved. So I think for me, you're better off asking your child, just to show you what it is. They can delete it, and if they want to hide it, if they want to have communication that you know nothing about, they may well have as I said earlier, they may have a second phone, and what you then have to revert to is how's my child behaving, what is changing in their behaviour. I'm concerned about it. What do I need to do? I need to have a conversation. Maybe there's you try to get access to what's going on without access to their technology because you can't see it.
Absolutely, it's an open conversation, and obviously Snapchat, the messages are disappearing as well anyway,
yes.
So to see those. And is there, I might be speaking my age here, but I recall sort of 5, maybe 10 years ago, concerns around apps that cover up apps. So on the face of it, it looks like it's the camera app, but actually when you press on it, it's something different. Is that something that's still prevalent?
Oh yeah, that'll still be there.
Yeah.
All those, there's always a way to subvert whatever's on the tech. Parents looking over your shoulder, well, here's an app. There used to be one for your boss. Boss walks into the room, you can hit a key and up appears what appears to be a very complex spreadsheet that you've been working on. Someone will always be finding a way to subvert it. Probably more so on Android because it's a slightly more open platform, but it will still be possible on the iOS store as well, I suspect. And if they are deliberately hiding apps from you, there's other signs that you're probably going to want to be aware of, because there's already a breakdown in trust there. And he's trying to get to the bottom of that. What are they doing with the app they're hiding, and why is it such a problem? So yes, there is a real challenge there.
And I know from my own child, they both have an iPad to do their doodle maths and times tables and spelling and things like that. But I control everything from my own iPhone, and even to download apps. The App Store's switched off, but if they wanted something, it can't download without those. So again, it's just one of those parenting controls you have. I think to round off our section around parenting and safeguarding is a question that came in, is that obviously young people feel maybe naively at times very safe online, and become very open, and just being able to, if they're asked a question, will just be honest and say, where do you live there? They'll tell you exactly the road and the number where they live. How do we work with young people to give more generic responses? I think the example we've given the question is, where do you live, is in the UK, and leave it as that rather than break it down. But how can we tackle that?
I think I live in England, and getting the children then to understand that's fine. But if someone starts asking, well, whereabouts in England do you live, and what town are you in, and that's interesting, and do you live near here? Because of course, if you say you live in a town, I can very quickly bring up Google and find out some street names or some shops. And it might appear that I can pretend that I live there or live close by, and suddenly you think, it's someone I know, or might know, or whatever. So I think getting children to be very generic, getting them to be conscious of the people out there, children randos, they're sometimes called random people, and I'm sure the language has changed in the last 10 years, but they will talk about those sorts of things, and they will joke about it to some extent, and sometimes they'll have quite a bit of fun baiting them, because it's a bit of a joke, but at the back of your mind is, as soon as you start to tell someone something, and say them, and they ask you nothing else, and maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, whereabouts in England do you live? And because you've been talking to them for 3 weeks, you feel they're more of a friend, so you would give a bit more information. It's always trying to get them to think about, well, how much do I know about these people? But even if they know where you live, does it pose a huge risk? A little bit. But then, do you tick the box on the electoral roll so you don't appear as an adult, as a parent, appear on the electoral roll? What are you doing as a parent to protect your family and yourself as much as they are doing to protect it? I would always hope they don't give out personal information, always encourage them not to. But then you also need to work on, when you take pictures, does it record the GPS location of where the picture was taken? Are you aware of that, and are you turning that off? Have you turned off location awareness in some of your apps so that they don't say where you are? So when you put a picture online, or you say, had a great day out today, or whatever you're posting, and it actually tells them where you live, because you've got 3,000 friends on Facebook, and now you're broadcasting your location. There's always looking at your privacy settings, what you are doing to protect yourself, what your child is doing to protect themselves, natively using the tool before they've even spoken to someone and started to give out information. It's really hard, but I think it's hoping that people are always conscious of that. But the more conversations you have with people you don't know, and the longer that conversation goes on, the harder it is not to tell them information, because you start to believe they're a friend because you've been talking to them for 3 or 6 months while you've never met them.
Yeah, and I think it's also having that open mind, isn't it? It's easy to fall into default that we see things in the press and the media and the horror stories and think that couldn't possibly happen to me, that couldn't possibly happen to my child. And sadly, in the world of safeguarding, I've had to work personally on cases with young people and families where it has come as shock, but they have been abused as a result of that, because of that trust that they've had in whoever they're talking to, and it turned out not to be the teenage girl in Wales, for example, that they thought they were talking to. So we're now going to move on to talking more deeply about digital safety, and that as an overview. And we talked previously about the online world and the dangers there, but be really direct, what are the risks of the online world? What are those risks? We could talk for hours, I know.
I think that the first one we always think about is inappropriate content. And that inappropriate content ranges from the sort of sexually explicit, whether it's audio, video, or written, all the way through to content that you don't want your child to read because it may talk about terrorism, may talk about extremists' politics, extreme religion, extreme behaviours. There is content out there about self-harm. There's content out there about losing weight and extreme non-eating, and we have to realise that through whatever you think you're looking at, there will be someone at the fringes of this who will be pushing content that they think is quite amusing because it upsets people or they like what it does to other people. There are people who strongly believe that this is the right thing to do, and they are trying to convert people to their way of thinking. The whole range of people are out there. Some of them are genuinely believe it, and some are just downright malicious. Some are run by nation states or groups of people who are trying to subvert certain parts of society, and they get a lot of fun from it. Huge amounts of misogynistic content out there, and I think Andrew Tate has been in the news a lot, but I think things have moved on a long way from him, and there is still content out there that is probably doesn't appear quite as extreme as him, but it is still promoting a very male-orientated society and culture that is quite appealing to groups of people, particularly those who are feeling isolated, who are feeling vulnerable, who are going through a period of challenge in their life, and teenage boys particularly can find that challenging. But even it's not even just them; it can be anyone. So I think there's that sort of content piece. We've talked about contact and inappropriate contact, and we have to remember that just giving out, you don't have to give out your name and address to have inappropriate content. There are people out there who will befriend both boys and girls, who will pretend to be their friend, will pretend to move from friendship into relationship, will start to suggest they share some photographs because they will have something shared to them, and will you share it back? And both boys and girls, and a lot of people think it's just girls who are sharing explicit images through inappropriate content, but it's boys as well, because boys are as vulnerable. Then off the back of that, then comes that conversation, well, unless you start to do more explicit things, I will share this content with your friends and family. I'll put it all over your Facebook profile. And the feeling of guilt and fear is such that they will do more and more extreme things. And the worst case examples is when they start to involve their family or their siblings in that as well.
And sadly, we have seen that in some of our schools in the trust, and we've had instances of that where children are being blackmailed to act in a certain way because the perpetrator has managed to track down the family's Facebook profiles, has screenshotted them, so it gives a real live, I know who your uncle is, and he will receive these images. So it is happening to our community here.
And it's been going on for quite a while. I mean, I was talking about sexually explicit images and self-generated images for quite a while. And I think the thing there is also, it may be consensual. It may be consensual between a boyfriend and a girlfriend, girlfriend, whatever, but between two young people who are exchanging explicit images because they feel that's part of a consensual relationship. And then the relationship breaks down, and one of them is sharing that content in what is commonly termed revenge porn. Interestingly, the law has recently changed where it's now become a criminal offence. Now, we don't generally criminalise young people because, of course, a sexually explicit image of a child is actually a serious criminal offence. We don't generally criminalise the child for it because they are not deemed to be, they're not the ones at fault, they're the ones who are at risk, and therefore how do we protect them? But if that content stays on the phone beyond the age of 18, they turn 18, they've got an explicit image of a child in there because they've been out with this person for 2 years, does that put them at risk? It's how we manage it. The problem is that online content now is changing what we would think of, and certainly I would think of, as a normal consensual relationship. The expectations of both young men and young women and how you should behave in a relationship is very, very different. And I know the school does a lot of work on consent, and the trust itself does the work on consent. And there is, if you look at the content online, often consent isn't in there. So, around this inappropriate contact, some of it is not just from a third party. It may be between two consenting young people, but there is a lot of targeting of people, and not just young people. There are adults who are also subject to this. Some of it is about fraud and romance fraud, but some of it is about generating inappropriate content and then blackmail. And it's not just children who are vulnerable to it. Adults are vulnerable as well. And in all of this, we need to think about not just our children as they are now, but as they grow up, but also about ourselves and how do we protect ourselves. Within that, there's cancel culture. I'm glad I'm not in the public eye because I'm not sure what I could say. Because whatever you say, someone will find a grievance against it and will be quite vitriolic. And if it's not today, it'll be in 3 years' time when it comes back up again. and what might be appropriate today may not be appropriate in 3 years' time. And I talk to my children about this, and talking about the conflict in Israel and Gaza is a real challenge, and what you put online, can you say anything? And having quite robust conversations with my children, not about what their opinion is and whether it's right or wrong, but actually saying, I just wouldn't say anything about it, because it's so nuanced. And if you are if you don't get your language right, if you don't say it in exactly the right way, it can be misconstrued and used against you. And there is a real issue around that. So I'm always very, very careful what I post online. Young people less so, because they are not so, well, they're quite forthright in their views, and quite rightly so. But you have to think very hard about what you say online. And there are people who have posted things when they were 13, 14, have found themselves at 20, 21 putting, going into the public eye, and suddenly people are going, oh, look what you said when you were 13. They're 13. They've changed opinion. What I thought at 13 is very different what I thought at 15, is very different what I thought at 21, very different what I think when I'm in my 50s. Give these people a break, but we as a society don't feel able to, partly because there are people on the fringes who like to amplify it because it drives a particular narrative that they feel is really important. And the last one really here is about AI. It's the government has released, the Department for Education has released information about AI. The exam boards are talking about AI. AI-generated content is becoming a real challenge. And if the risks in the online world are quite frightening with that. You no longer need to share an explicit image of yourself. AI can do it for you, even if you've never done it. It won't be your body, but it'll look like it'll have your head on it. They can generate cloned voices, and that's sort of the extreme end of this. But also you have AI tools that will give you misinformation. You don't know what certain AI tools. I could create an AI tool that can have a very specific agenda, and you won't know what the agenda is if I don't tell you. And yet I can get it to give you answers that will move you in a very particular direction. The bit that worries me more is children and adults who see AI as a friend, who start having conversations with it and start to believe the responses that it gives them. And if you're in a bad space, you feel you can't talk to your parents, you're not really engaging with your teachers and your friends, and you start asking AI, well, what do I do? I'm not very happy. AI will start to give you answers that reflect the sorts of questions you're asking and are generally positive, and or they are positively reinforcing what you are thinking if you're not careful. And it can take you into some very odd places and quite dark places.
And I know as a trust we're putting together our AI policy to come out, and it's something else that we're working with in the schools around that, and adding that to our digital safeguarding strategy, but also part of upskilling young people about how to use it appropriately. And
I think we as adults need to be upskilled. I mean, I feel inadequate at times with AI. It is a brand new skill. It is, if you want to do it well, there's certain things you need to understand. And if you hear the term prompt engineering, that's about how you ask it the right question to get the right answer. But they are, AI tools are designed to please. And that can be quite a challenge.
Absolutely. You touched on this earlier, and a parent's raised, and actually interested enough that it resonates with me. My role as Director of Safeguard Trust to make sure that across all our schools we have effective filtering and monitoring taking place through the use of ICT. I said to you I have parental controls on what was needed, but I don't actually put anything on the internet at home and filtering and protecting that. And a parent has raised that. Is it possible to filter your own home internet?
Yes. So on my home internet, the last 3 providers I've had, you can certainly put some basic parental controls on there. You can block things. It's blocked for everybody. It's not just in school we can change the filtering based on age, and you can tweak it slightly. If you're doing A-levels, A-level English or A-level history or A-level politics, you might want slightly different content to someone who's in year 7 or year 5. So there is a slight difference there, but yes, you can block content. It is not perfect, but it does most of what you want. And you know, if you want to block gambling sites, it can block gambling sites. If you want to block pornography, it will block pornography. You can block social media. They're all slightly different, but they will block content for you. You have to remember though that not only is it your broadband you've got to block filter, you've got to filter your mobile phone, because I can tether I spend a lot of time tethering my laptop to my phone when I'm out and about. You can buy additional monitoring tools to put on your device. Apple, they don't work so well. And again, because of how Apple manage and control it, it's quite hard to filter an Apple device, but it is possible. Monitoring is harder. Android is easier, and there are tools out there that will enable you to monitor and filter them. I mean, I still get notifications when my son buys an Xbox game when he's 21, or buys an uplift to it. And that's mainly because I haven't worked out how to turn it off now. Yeah. So I think there is filtering is a good starting point. It's not the be all and end all, and you generally don't get a log of everything, and if you did, you wouldn't want to be flicking through it all because it's quite hard work. But it is a good way of providing it. But for young children, supervision, I think, is the most important bit. I'm not sure I would, letting a child go off into a room on their own who's 6 or 7 years old with an iPad that I've got no control of, I'd be concerned about. Giving them my phone to play a game on, you're not quite sure what advert they will see and where that might lead them. So I would always be, in the same way as in schools, we have different levels of supervision. The same thing would happen at home.
And interestingly, you touched on gambling and pornography sites, because at the end of the month, the laws changed around age verification for these as well. Are you able to just talk a little bit more about what that's about?
I haven't looked into enough detail about the age verification, but they should be requiring the sites that, and again, it's the sites that are more legitimate than the ones that aren't legitimate. So the sites that want to be legal will have to have some age verification on there. Sometimes it will be through your face, which of course no one really wants. If you're accessing some of this pornographic content, you may not want them having a picture of you, but that's how they will use it, because you can't do it through credit card, although they might use that as well. They're trying to find ways to verify you, because a child can pick up a credit card to verify. I mean, but if you're paying for it, then hopefully the parents looking at the bill going, what's this money for? But they are trying to find ways to put age verification in. I would worry more about the content that isn't verified, and there are sites out there such as 4chan that aren't necessarily pornographic websites but host quite a lot of inappropriate content. So, the sites that host it and host it legitimately for adult consumption that want to be accessible in the UK will do it. For those that are not legitimate, they will either sit there because it's user-generated content, and therefore we have no their responses, we have no control of it, or it'll be outside the UK, and if a child wants to access it, they'll put a VPN on their phone, which basically means that you can appear to be from somewhere else. And there are lots of adverts out there for VPN tools that enable you to watch movies from other countries that you can't access in the UK. Well, you can also access any content you want as if you're not in the UK. So there is there will be ways around it, and people will find ways around it. It's a start, but I don't think we can rely on government or legislation or technology to do what really is a parenting thing.
Absolutely. One of the questions, and what we'll do is when we send out obviously this event to everyone, we'll add some links as well for you to look at. But one of the questions came about YouTube parental settings and how you can manage that.
YouTube's come on a long way, and it's really pleasing to see. There is age-appropriate media for kids and teens. There's a link there. You can set up appropriate age accounts. You can limit access to adult content. You can link accounts. It's voluntary, but you can say if you want to use it, you need to link the account to give parents insight into your child's use. So there's a bit of consent from the child, which is quite nice. but maybe your rule on using it, you need to have you need to give me consent. I wouldn't necessarily let your child use your account because it will provide them to an inappropriate content. So create a child account, get them to give you access, and then as they get older, you can free it up a little bit because there's probably some content they want to watch that you wouldn't want a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old to watch. But for a teenager, it's a little bit on the risky side, but it's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And this leads me to Snapchat and other, because a lot of apps have age restrictions on them, don't they, as well. A question came in: should be allowing the child? I don't know the age of the child for this question, but should you allow the child to have Snapchat or social media, even if they are below the age for access?
If they're below the age for access, I'd say no, because I sound a bit sort of bit of a Puritan. You shouldn't break the rules, but the age there is driven by American law, partly EU law, but a lot by American law. But EU, I know we're not part of the EU, but we follow a lot of their guidance. And in some countries, like Spain, it's 16, a lot of these. So I think yes, if a child is under 13, don't let them use it because that's what the rules are. And there are parental controls. They exist for Snapchat. They're also there for Instagram. And try and encourage them to use those that have family settings. Some of it will be driven by what you as a household use. So if you're on WhatsApp, then probably WhatsApp's where they're going to end up. If their friends are using Snapchat, they're probably going to want to use Snapchat. And it won't just be one, it'll be 3 or 4 types of tool they'll want to use. And of course, you've still got texting. And again, you won't have oversight of that unless you look at the phone. So it's the balance of what parental controls can I put on, is it age appropriate? And again, I've shared some links and we'll show those out of what are the age appropriate, what are the ages for these, do they have parental controls? And sometimes the sites will give you a chance to see what do parents think of them, what do children think of them, and you can then make some decisions yourself.
Absolutely. Another question that came in, and I think we covered this, but it's about how do we engage in meaningful conversations with our children. We said that knowing the apps that they're using, setting out from the start how it's going to be used on the phone, parental controls, which we talked about a lot to add to this, playing the games with them so you get to know it yourself as well and what they're doing. And I think you said to me before, and I've felt this is actually, you learn a lot from your child, and it's one of the biggest learning curves for me was COVID when my children were doing maths. I was like, crikey, maths has come a lot more advanced at a 6-year-old than it was when I was at school. But it's the same thing, isn't it? As that how much they actually know and what they can play. And the older children, you touched on obviously your wife commented leaving a heart emoji for them as well. And about managing the content as well. We've touched on it briefly about algorithms, but you just talk a little bit more about that and the impact of those.
Yeah, I think the first one on the apps is if your child wants an app, get them to talk through how they're securing it. What privacy settings are you putting on it? How are you securing it? What are you stopping? Oh, what's that mean? And get them to talk you through it. Because they may be quite articulate about how you protect, and if they don't know how to protect it, maybe you say, well, let's work through how we can make it nice and safe and secure, so we are happy as a family with this, and then come back 2 or 3 weeks later, how are you getting on with it, what are you doing with it, how's it going, because how they use it may be different to how you use it, and they will probably tell you how to do Instagram Reels. I still don't quite understand them. And how Snapchat works, how TikTok works, and some of the things they've created, and you may find they're really creative. So do talk to them. I think the algorithms there, and this is the challenge with social media, is that what sells isn't necessarily what you want your child to see. What people click on isn't necessarily what your child wants to see. So when you use technology and you click on a link, it tells the tool, this is something you like. If you spend a long time watching a video, you like this quite a lot. Look at the people you're following. Well, based on what you're following and what you've looked at and the link you've clicked on, I'm going to give you more of this content. And the problem is that you'll often click on links that look interesting because they've got what you call clickbait. They've got a really interesting title, and if you have a news site on as your homepage. You go, oh, that looks interesting. Oh, that story relates nothing to the title that was there, but you're teaching the algorithm that maybe that's the content you want to see and it'll push more at you. And generally, it tends to go more to the extreme and more to the less desirable content. And it's what we call rabbit holes. It sort of drives you down very specific rabbit holes. And yes, you click on more, you refine the algorithm, and it becomes more and more interested in it. So they tend to drive you to more extreme content. You can do things like mute content that you don't like, and that will tell the algorithm try not to give me any more of that.
Yeah.
Use not interested, but the longer you spend on specific content, the more you follow, the more it will push you that way. And so it's trying to get your child to think about it. And it may well be you delete your history and you start again. So you go, I'm deleting it, I'm going to start again, and reset that algorithm. Because some of the content that it starts to push isn't particularly nice. And it may well be they get to see videos they didn't want to see close to bedtime that upsets them. And if they're interested in climate change, does it push more and more extreme climate change content at them? Does it start to offer other content that's sort of adjacent to climate change or activism that then takes them down areas that they don't want it on? Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, we mentioned about Snapchat. Again, we'll put a link in about this, but a question came in is checking Snapchat history. Is that a possible thing to do?
You can get a little bit of history. So within Snapchat, you can see who their friends are from the family center. So if you set up parental controls, it does help. You can see some of the history, but not the content. And again, it's because it auto deletes. It's just not there; it's gone. And that's part of their selling point, is that once it's gone, it's gone. You can't recover it. But you can. A user can request the history, but it will be limited in terms of you might see who's been sending the messages, but you won't see the content. And I think the thing to remember about Snapchat is that it does disappear, and you technically can't screenshot it, but you can if you've got another device. And this is when you talk to children and you're doing workshops with them about Snapchat and why they use, and they talk about, well, it disappears. I say, well, I can take a picture. Oh, no, you can't do that anymore. You can't take a screenshot. I say, yes, I can if I've got another phone there, can't I? And they look at you a little bit shocked because you've thought a little bit further ahead than they have. But it is having those conversations and realising that, just because that one device doesn't let you, I can always take a screen grab with something else and screenshot something else.
Absolutely. Quite rightly, parents raised about, she's got a Spotify or family plan, and the child has their own account. How can they protect to ensure they're not able to access or hear or listen or watch inappropriate content on Spotify?
The Spotify Kids, which is separate, ad-free, app designed for children 12 and under, has kid-friendly content, music, audiobooks, and does come with a premium family subscription. I'm still paying for my children's Spotify accounts, and they've left home. I'm not sure that's quite right. You can put explicit content filters, so you can block explicit content from sub-accounts, and it's the premium family accounts, one you've got to pay a bit more for. And parents can monitor listening habits and restrict certain content. I think the challenge is you're relying on, it's quite sort of blunt as a tool, and some of the stuff around the edges are quite hard. But you can manage to some extent. I mean, there is an age rating in Spotify. So Spotify is generally recommended for 13 plus and younger children, Spotify Kids. But I think for me, it's that sort of conversation, and also using the controls to see what they're watching.
Yeah, absolutely. And the final bit on this section was asking about, online, I could talk to you a little bit about this, but in terms of what rules or controls are in place in schools for online safety when students bring their mobile phones to schools.
I think the school probably has none, and it's a real challenge. You want your child to be safe on their way to and from school, so they have a mobile phone to them to and from school, and so they you can contact them at the end of the school day, make rearrangements if they say I'm going home with my mates. But the school will filter their internet connection, and if the child connects to the school internet connection is allowed to, it will be filtered that way. But in terms of, if the child's on the phone, it is provided by the parent and is therefore managed through that route. I mean, schools, and you can probably talk more about this than I can, will have rules about, can you have them out in lessons? Can you, should they be visible at break and lunchtime? My feeling is it's quite nice if they're not, because they then converse with each other, and I'm quite a big one on that, it's a human interaction. But it's a challenge if they're coming in school, unless schools start to invest in those pouches that you can put them in where they're locked away all day. You can't expect schools to take phones off children, because it's a nightmare to manage. But I know there are some schools out there that have invested in these RFID pouches that lock them away. That comes with its own challenges, of course, because some children need access to a phone if they are diabetic and they're monitoring blood sugar. So you have to manage that side of things. Some parents will feel they want to be able to contact their child at any point in the day for an emergency. So you need to put protocols in place to manage that, going to the school office, etc. So it's not perfect, but really, unless because the parents provided the child with the device, the responsibility lies with them. But the school may well have measures in place to manage how it's used around school.
Absolutely. And just to take a conversation a little bit further about filtering and monitoring, so I work alongside James and our IT manager for the Trust, Sully Ward, to look across the Trust how we're filtering and monitoring with the school-owned devices. And what we have set up as a principle is that where a student, if they're on a device and start searching up something and keywords we put into that system, so if they're potentially going to harm themselves or someone else is in danger or harm, they're looking up for it, so that will send an immediate notification to whoever the school sets it up, so it's normally the designated safeguarding leads, so they can intervene straight away. An example at one of our schools yesterday was a PSHC lesson was taking place at the end of the day, and my inbox became full of students Googling Childline and Samaritans, and it was an instant alert, and fortunately it was purely because of the lesson content that's been taught, but it allows you to intervene at that stage straight away if we need to. We're going to come on to our last section now, which is really about digital security. I know this is concerned because we don't really talk about this part as much. We're normally all about, we could probably play Parental Controls bingo from this talk, because I haven't told you to mention that today. But really about keeping devices safe and secure. What can parents do?
Yeah, and it's interesting that one of my other hats is cybersecurity, and I invest a lot of time in how I secure my devices. I think before mobile phones were quite prevalent, there was always concern about children with devices in bedrooms that were commandeered by malicious parties who could turn on the webcam, turn on the microphones when the children were in the bedroom and record what's going on. And occasionally you get a bit of spam email saying, I've been filming you through your webcam, trying to extort money from you. And it's a scam, but it is possible to do it if you aren't diligent in updating your application, applying your patches and your updates from Microsoft or from Apple or from Android. If on a Windows device you're not putting anti-malware or protection tools on there just to protect it from malicious content. So really, there's a bit there about making sure that your devices are protected so they can't be compromised. So that if the worst thing happens and someone compromises your device and encrypts it, and suddenly all those photographs are wiped. How many of you have actually got hard copies of your photographs? Most of us have got tens of thousands of photos on our devices that we would be devastated if we lost them. But actually, are we doing enough to protect them? And part of that is ensuring our devices are up to date. Every second Tuesday of the month is Microsoft's Patch Tuesday. Now, for us in the UK, that kicks in about 6 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon or evening, because of course it's midnight in America when it kicks in, or when Americans start waking up. So it's something to be aware of, is updating your device, making sure it's patched, whether it's an Android phone, iOS phone, or a Windows Mac device, all those things you really ought to be making sure kept up to date, because it protects your data, stops people stealing it, and is a very good practice to get into.
And I suppose it goes back to as well, to finalise this, in terms of protecting accounts in the first place, which goes back to...
Yeah, and it's that admin piece as well. Who is the admin of the... if you buy your child a device, do you have administrative control of it? So at least you can get access to it and see what's been going on. You can make sure it's protected. My children now have admin. I don't control the devices, but up until they left home, I was the person who could control what apps they could install. I could control what they could connect to. I could make sure it had antivirus and those sorts. So I took the control of that. Now, you might say, well, that's part of your job. You do that in the day job. How do I do it? But it is quite possible that the first person who starts it up is the administrator on that, and then you create an account for a child. And that's the way I would do it. Don't give them a nice shiny box, say, there you go, you can do everything you want with it, because then you've lost control and you can't manage and monitor.
And it's incredible what children can do and how much knowledge they have as well, isn't it?
I think we think they're much better than they are. It's quite interesting. If you ask a child, well, how do you turn off location services on your mobile phone? Some of them won't know how to do it.
No.
They're very good at what they spend a lot of time doing.
Yeah.
They're not very good at the bits that don't interest them.
Yeah.
I'm very good on Windows devices. Give me an iOS phone, and I do struggle a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's not something I use regularly. It's not something I'm particularly interested in.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, James. We've covered a lot of different areas there, and I hope you found that useful as well. I think one of the things that I've had to sort of put my mind at rest as a parent and a safeguarding leader is that we will always be one step behind with digital safeguarding, and I don't like that because we always want to get ahead of it, but there's always going to be something new. There's always going to be a new app that comes out that's a concern. There's always going to be new trends and new themes. And the most important thing is we keep talking, and as a trust, it's really important to us to always alert you straight away as soon as you know something. Those of you who've seen some of my letters before, it always has that key paragraph though, is that we have to strike the balance about what we tell our students. If we were to say to the students, there's a new app out, don't look at that app, it's dangerous and we're really concerned about it, the first thing they're going to do when they get home is download that app because they're inquisitive, aren't they? So it's always getting that balance right.
Yeah, and I think that there is a little bit of hype out there sometimes, and I can't remember which one it was that went around a few years ago, where, and even the police were starting to circulate, and it turned out to be a little bit false.
Yeah.
And so it's being acutely aware that sometimes it gets a bit viral when it doesn't need to. For me, it comes back to it's about how we parent, it's about how we support our children, how we talk to our children about what they're doing, how we have a conversation about who their friends are, both virtual as well as real, who are they talking to, and just keeping that dialogue and conversation open. That gets harder as they hit teenage years. There is, as I've found, it gets better.
Yes.
But to constantly have a conversation with your children to make sure that if something does go wrong, they feel they can come and say, I've got a problem, I've done something stupid, can you help me?
Yeah.
In much the same way as you and your team across the trust, children know they can come and talk to you when there's an issue. So I think it's important.
Absolutely. And I think I always say the safeguarding is for a young person to make sure that the world's going to keep spinning, the sun will rise tomorrow, but we're going to do it with you in terms of this next step in the journey of that. So, massive thank you, James. This is something that we will revisit in the future again as we see changes change and trends and themes change, and obviously we'll keep in contact with you of anything else that comes up. But in the meantime, if you have any concerns, please do address and contact your designated safeguard leads at the school who are upskilled and have the knowledge as well and be able to support with this. So thank you very much, and thank you, James.
Thank you, Railton.